Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Robert Jaquay. On today's show, we're going to have another conversation about artists in the area. We're going to be talking to Constance Dodge, who is the director of the Oakroom Artists. Let's go meet her. Constance, thank you very much for agreeing to be a guest on my show today.
I'm delighted.
Nice having you here. Now, before we start talking about the Oakroom Artists, I want to have our viewers know a little bit more about you and how you became involved with this group.
Well, actually, it came from an association with the current director of the Oakroom Artists. And eventually in 1996, I was invited to become a member. At any rate, prior to then, for at least 10 years, we had an association. Both of us were art teachers in the capital region, and we had worked together on a number of projects. And so through that association, it was more of a collegial association, as well as she knew who I was as an artist. I was a member of a gallery in New York City through the late 90s, and through that association, Karen Rosowsko had been the director at that time, and she became acquainted with me and my work, and she decided that she wanted to extend that opening to me, and so I applied to the Oakroom Artists. And
okay, and we're going to talk more about
yes,
that as well. Now we currently have an exhibition at the library here from the Oakroom Artists, and I'm not sure how many people know about you. So want to find out who are the Oakroom Artists, or talk about the origins of this organization.
Well, the Oakroom has quite a history. At least now the history is 51 years of existence. We just celebrated the 50th year celebration. But the interesting part about the Oakroom Artists is the fact that the founder was Betty Roth from Schenectady. And what was really wonderful about her, just in addition to being the founder of the Oakroom, and I will give you those associations, is that she was really a mover and a shaker. She was a catalyst. She was one of the people behind the formation of the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, in addition to being connected to Schenectady Symphony and other arts activities in the community. I don't want to go on with an entire resume. She is a painter, but she was trained in music and has a background in art history from Mount Holyoke. So she
a real champion of the arts.
Absolute champion of the arts. And I can't begin to tell you, and she continues to be, even though she is at in Lenox and Kimball Farm, which is a retirement community with assisted living. She continues to go to the nursing home portion of the wing and play ragtime to enlighten the individuals. So she's just an amazing personality and continues to be extremely active. But her association with Gustav Lambros in Schenectady, he invited her to come to the Hotel Schenectady and have lunch. And of course the lunch was in an oak paneled dining hall. And she looked around and she said, "Gus, you need paintings on the wall." And so that was really the seed for the formation of the Oakroom Artists, which as it evolved. And he said, "Well, can you get me some painters?" She said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." And so she began by seeking out individuals like James Gilliland and George Weinheimer. George Weinheimer was very involved with the Schenectady School District and was well known
So were
in
these-
art education.
Okay, but were these people well known for their art as well? But you say art education, but
Yes.
okay.
Painters.
Okay.
And James Gilliland also not only was a teacher, but he was involved in advertising. So there were several individuals like that, but also there were people who were strictly in advertising and in commercial art, individuals associated with GE. And so that was another involvement, and college professors. So that was really
So
the
she collected a
formation.
group.
She collected a group of people. Sal Cassio is one of the individuals. George Betzel. Haven't got them all committed to memory. John Watrous, Charles Annan, and John Abruzzi. So this very small group of individuals in the very beginning.
And they're considered the charter members of this
Charter
group.
members, and then Mary Jo Suxdorf joined them in that very same year, in 1956. So that's when everything began to evolve in the formation of a group, and they began having exhibitions. In fact, I guess the comments were about Mary Jo Suxdorf. She had 400 people attending her reception, and so everyone decided that the reason for such a success was that she had the longest mailing list possible. So, at any rate, that was the very beginning of their showing in the region, and they had great notoriety.
So they concentrated basically, though, in the gallery, the Oakroom Gallery, or in the Oakroom.
Yes,
and then you saw
at the Hotel Schenectady.
At the
Yes.
Hotel Schenectady.
Yes.
And was it advertised as such, or just?
Yes, it was in the newspaper, and they would have the times. They began to have receptions, and they had very formal affairs where anyone who was pouring punch and so on wore white gloves, and ladies wore hats, and it was quite a formal event with silver and all of the polishing of.
The 50s seems so long ago.
I
But
know.
yes, I can see it.
I know. You can just see it in the 1950s. So, that was quite quite the event, and they had all of this advertised in the newspaper, and there became quite the following.
Now, was there a type of art? I hope that's okay to say, a type of art that was represented by this group, or
I would say in that time period, the most of the work was attuned with abstract expressionism, which was the most avant-garde movement at the time, from the 50s into the 60s, and certainly with the dominance of the New York School. Both of those would definitely influence the type of art that was being produced.
can you give a little bit more detail about abstract expressionism, what it would?
Well, abstract expressionism, the interesting thing about abstract expressionism is when you think of the real emergence, not that all abstraction only emerged after World War II, it was emerging much earlier in the century with individuals like Kandinsky and others associated with Kandinsky, and with the Bauhaus movement in the 1920s. But there was a real emergence of abstraction, especially after the horrors of what we experienced in two arenas with World War II. If you think of the horrors of Europe and the Holocaust and what was happening in Hiroshima, that type of influence upon the world would not want you to look, would not incline you to look at the world around you as much as going into an interior space, and perhaps more of the meditative space of drawing within, and where there was a different space that could be expressed.
So are you also expressing feelings rather than depicting actual?
Yes, it's a combination, because if you look at so many of the abstract expressionists, it was something that would emerge from their spirit, their creative powers, but at the same time, because there's certain individuals who are much more tranquil. I think of Gottlieb, and yet if you think of Jackson Pollock and the rhythmic patterns on his canvas, or some of de Kooning's, which could almost harbor many more hostile energies, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
if
I
you
do.
think of
Yes, I do.
some of these, so. But there's a great beauty to abstract expressionism, Rothko and numerous others. I mean, it's just a remarkable power, and some of them, especially I think of Rothko, one could almost feel like one is within a chapel to sit before several of his works. So there was quite a range, I think, and according to personalities, and so the same thing would be true in the Oakroom, where these artists were creating in that vein.
Even though it coincides with an era, where this movement was occurring, I'm thinking this probably was a pretty bold thing to do in this particular area. Or yes or no?
I would say yes. In those days, when I think of the collection, even though there was the Mohawk Hudson Regional, and that has been ongoing for certainly many years. Nonetheless, when you think of the collections, the Albany Institute of History and Art, or some of the other regional collections like the Hyde or in Williamstown, you still have the collections of earlier times, and not anything, nothing really representing abstract expressionism.
So it was unique in
So it would be unique to the capital region, absolutely.
Now I know in terms of music, expressionistic music, these are the kind of pieces that our audiences are hard to find. And sometimes I think even today when we get whatever we want to call modern music,
Yes.
They're infused into a traditional program, and many times people who attend like what's surrounding it, but really would rather not. And yet it's an opportunity for people to be introduced, and I think if given a proper context, people are willing to maybe move a little closer to it. So thinking about art like this, I would imagine it might be, although it seems like you had a built-in audience with the receptions, but selling it to people or having people come in and say, this is something different here, let's go look at this.
Yes, and of course it was, the response was very positive. Most people would sell about 6 paintings with every opening reception. So that was quite remarkable that this was happening. And in addition to that, they would do something around the holidays and at Christmas time to bring out work, to make it available for gifts. People wanted to purchase paintings for gifts. And they also had a rental program that they started. So people could rent paintings per month.
And not prints, but the actual painting.
No, the actual painting.
That's
no
wonderful.
Prints, yeah.
Never heard that
It was
before.
the real thing. And so it's kind of interesting that they had that so in the early days, because eventually Janice Dorgan started doing this with the Albany Institute.
I'm thinking rent to own. I mean, you could
Yes.
you could take
You
it for
could
a month,
rent.
and all of a sudden you
Sure.
say, I can't part with this piece.
Exactly, and you could actually buy the painting, which would be a perfect idea. So they had all of these activities happening from the 50s into the 60s.
Is there such a thing? I'm thinking, obviously there are artists, living artists, who are not only showing their art, but selling their art and having people bring their art into their lives. Is there anything like a permanent collection, or is there anything that is, evocative of the beginning and saying these are paintings that are always going to be ours, or no? Does it continually? Well,
there is a collection of Oakroom artists at the Schenectady Museum.
Okay.
If this is what you're
Yes.
hinting at, there are about 43 pieces in their collection, And of course, you know that there's a great transformation going on with the Schenectady Museum, that they are also changing over to a totally science-based center. And so we have an ongoing dialogue about the eventual home for the Oakroom paintings. They'll probably be keeping 6 or 7 pieces because they find them appropriate to the technologies connected to GE. And
Okay.
So in that light, they're going to hold on to some of the pieces. But aside from that, we have a dialogue going with the Arkel, and the Arkel will be interested. They have been along for many years. They have been having an affiliation with the Oakroom Artists. In fact, with their grand opening that is going to be occurring on the 23rd of this month, they, have the Oakroom Artists as part of an exhibition in Canajoharie because of this long tie that we've had with them in showing work, either individuals who are Oakroom artists or the group shows of the Oakroom Artists. So
Seems like a very a select group of people, and obviously it's not somebody, you just don't walk up and say, I want to be in your group.
that's true. That's true.
How does one become a part of this?
Well, it has evolved over the years. I mean, there have been only 102 members of the Oakroom Artists while it has been in existence. And if any of the members happen to spot an artist that they think would be really appropriate for the group and would be a great asset to the group, someone might recommend them. And then the artist has to present his or her work to the entire group. Now, the artist doesn't have to be there during this time. What they do is leave examples of their paintings or of their printmaking, or if they happen to be working in fiber or any whatever the medium, they will leave samples of their work, resume, artist statement, any material that has been published about the artist, and in addition, either a CD or slides of their work. Then the entire group convenes, usually during the annual meeting. And one aspect of the business during the annual meeting then is to consider the artist. Everyone takes a look at the work and reviews it, and then there's a vote. And then the artist may become a member if there is a 2/3
Okay,
vote
that's
in favor of the artist. So it has to be voted upon by the entire membership so that we more or less get a consensus.
Now, do you critique it as well if an artist is presenting his or her work and perhaps isn't chosen? Is there a critique? Is there any kind?
Yes, people make comments about why they find someone really very favorable, or vice versa. They are going to talk about aspects of the work that they don't believe is valuable or whatever. Just basically working on some type of a basis that is professional and based on aesthetics.
I can imagine it could be brutal, but I can imagine it also be very constructive as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
In your, you're an organization. You have an annual meeting. You say, you probably meet regularly. Do you have a set of bylaws, or do you have
Yes, we do. We do
criteria that you?
We do. We have a set of bylaws, but our primary function is having the membership also attend all of these receptions that the artists are giving in the Oakroom Artists Gallery, which currently is the First Unitarian Society and has been their home gallery since 1991.
Okay. So and that's where you'll have your primary exhibit.
That's where we have primary exhibits, and then we have group exhibits throughout the entire area. We have shown at Adirondack Community College. We will have shown at Cooperstown this fall, because we have an October exhibit there. It's very unusual that we have 3 group shows happening at once. It's kind of one of those unusual sets of circumstances. Usually we might have a couple of group shows during a year, and they're usually spread out 6 months apart or something of that sort. So it's highly unusual. But we have exhibited at Crasdale Corporation in the New York City area, the Bronx. In addition to that, Copelskill, numerous colleges in the area.
Do you prepare catalogs for your exhibits, or?
We had a catalog with the Crasdale Corporation. So we haven't really done extensive catalogs. I know it's highly favorable to do that with certain shows. I wished that we could have had it for our 50th. That would have been really ideal.
That would have been nice.
Yes.
Especially since you talk about the different venues. I mean, you're really spreading out. It's not just
Yes.
locally here.
Yes.
Now, we talked about the type of art that was representative of the beginning. Has that been sustained? Is that the direction, or are you? How have you broadened out, and if so, how?
I would say that we're quite diversified. You know, of course, originally there were just strictly people who were painting in oil or watercolors. That was pretty much it. And then eventually other media got added, so that we have 2 sculptors now.
I was going to ask you if you had.
Yes, one is a sculptor and painter, Paul Kant. Tom Shopman is a sculptor. So we have them. We have George DeRalph, who is a painter and also a printmaker. He does really beautiful work, and in fact, I just saw his recent engravings that were just splendid. We have a number of watercolorists. Karen Rosasco comes to mind, and Maureen Soul, Karen Cooper. It's hard to start naming people, you know.
Yeah.
We have 2 fiber artists who do magnificent work.
What is fiber art?
Well, they're using fabric, and in fact, you've got in the current show we have 2 wall hangings by Lori Lupi-Pellish. She has 2 hangings, and she does these, and these are very figurative, but incredibly rich with the various fabric that she selects. And to look at them from a distance, they look like they're paintings, you know, because it takes all the skills of what is used
Sure.
in painting and watercolor or all other media, but at the same time, it's all having been done in fabric. It's just magnificent, you know, to look at.
So on close inspection, you see that it is
Yes,
this,
you
but
see
away
this.
from it,
Yes,
it's.
and so there's a richness to the surface. So, and Peg Foley does more abstracted work, but again using fiber as her basis of creating. So it gives quite a diversity, and certainly many wonderful oil painters in the group. You know, we have. I'm just trying to think of some of them. Of course, David Arsenal, you know, got his work, and numerous others. Cale Court has oil.
Now, are these
you know.
people in the current show that's here? Some of these
Yes,
people.
yes, some of the same ones. Stu Eichel is very much a plein air painter, and he goes out in the field. In fact, the day I put the show up in Canajoharie, I was on my return trip home, came through Fonda, and proceeded up 30A, and there's Stu on the side of the road, looking, working on a Victorian house off to the side, and so that's kind of delightful. And so if you ever happen to see a painter out like that, it's very apt to be Stu, and he's gotten a lot of press in Albany. He was working in Arbor Hill for a period of time. So It's kind of unique that we have such such a group.
When someone comes to the exhibit, and I mean art, I think going and looking at art, I'm not sure what people need to know about what they should be experiencing or what they need to bring to it, other than maybe an open mind. But how does one look at art? And I mean, if there is anything exactly that would say this is how you look at art.
Well, I think, and I almost began to have this conversation with Joan Krathaus, who has 2 more abstracted pieces downstairs. And what was very interesting, we were just talking about, she said, well, I told her when I looked at one of her pieces, I said, it reminded me of having been in a kiva in the Southwest because of the more or less enveloping darkness and with the open spaces. And she said, well, it was very much. It was the exhumation of spirit. And she said, but it is very much a spiritual type of piece. And so you can derive that. So when you think about anyone approaching a work, it doesn't really matter what the artist meant. It's what any individual sees, and whatever that dynamic is, it's something that might be internalized in a way that is meaningful and gives some symbolism, whether it's of people or it's a place or it's about feelings.
So really what's happening inside of you as a result
you
of
as the viewer.
experiencing this.
You as the viewer have to just shed any, ideally the viewer is supposed to shed any preconceived concepts and just stand there and allow the work to enter into them, to actually just take in the colors, the shapes that are there, whatever dynamics are occurring, whether it's abstract, whether it's of people or a place, to just take that in, you know, and allow it to be, rather than trying to find out exactly what the artist intended.
Right. And that's why I think even naming it, I mean, oftentimes there's a title for the picture, possibly if you just forget about that or go around for a list. And so you're really inviting people to linger and to absorb and to experiencing it, rather than just circulate through the collection. And I think people have a tendency to go to something that attracts them, pulls them for whatever reason, and may miss something along the way. So when you set up an exhibit, it's not necessarily done thematically. How do you arrange an exhibit?
Actually, when you're doing a group show especially, you really have to cite the show so that the work, actually each work can be seen unto itself and yet not fighting with its neighbor. So as you come into the entrance where the work is in the corridor before you enter the large gallery, the work that you see before you works in harmony. They all work in harmony with each other, so they're not really fighting, but there's a balance of how they work together. And the same thing is true in the larger gallery, is to cite the work on the walls so that there's a balance. For instance, if there are really warm colors, really hot colors, or just accents in certain paintings, if they're balanced out through the room, it's easier for the eye. Now, if they were all of the reds and all of the oranges were all put together, it would just be much too much.
Much too much.
Too much action, too much energy. But if it's balanced, and this also has to be worked out with the verticals, the various verticals versus the horizontals, and size. Some things are small and some are
find it
a little
fascinating.
bit. Yeah. So
some places are grouped by artist, but I like the idea too, or not the idea, but the need to not have another work intrude.
Yes.
And yet you do have spatial issues,
Yes.
Numbers of paintings, number of pieces of art versus the size of the space, and yet this consideration to sort of being able to individualize a particular piece.
Yes, exactly.
How wonderful.
You know, so it's, and it is a challenge. Sometimes it's very difficult to put certain group shows together, but the remarkable thing is that there was such a harmony the way this show went up. It was just wonderful.
We're
Yeah.
making it very exciting for people to want to see it, I trust.
I hope so. I hope so.
I hope so too.
You know.
I've had a wonderful time talking with you today, and before we part, because we're coming to the end of the program, is there anything else you'd like to say about the Oakroom Artists or the exhibitions? Is there a contact, or do you want? Is there a way for people to find out
Yes.
more about you?
Actually, if they check with our website, which is the oakroomartists.com,
Okay.
they can check and see what artists are doing. And usually our current shows are listed. You know, we're just getting, we have a gentleman who's working on, you know, just the final phases of making sure the schedule is set. But any of the work that is being done by the Oakroom as a group, there should be listings in the newspapers, but primarily the website.
Okay.
Would recommend that individuals go to the website, and they can also see several images of artists who are in this current show, as well as the others who are not.
Just stepping back a little bit, a thought I had: are artists present? Well, I know we're open X number of hours a day, and after the reception, people aren't necessarily here to guide people, but does it help to have an artist present or somebody who's there that possibly can talk about a piece of art, work, or is it, like we said before, something that just can stand on its own? And
I believe that the art can stand on its own. I mean, if an individual were interested enough in a piece, or to be interested enough to buy that particular piece, or in wanting to see the work of other artists who are in the show, you could also go to our website, and many individuals have links.
okay, so if you want
to
to
their
pursue a
own-
particular artist,
Yes,
okay,
they could actually pursue them through our website.
and I'm sure there are people who do have favorites
Yes,
who seek them out.
absolutely. You know, and if there were a personal question that someone wanted to look into, right now I have a one-page website also through the Lower Adirondack Arts Council. It's actually www.larac.
We'll put it up.
Yes, yes. We just, you know, it can be through Larac that they could do that, or C. Dodge Art at frontiernet.net.
Okay. There are lots of art organizations and group. I'm finding more and more as I'm having these conversations with people. I
Yes.
think there's just an extraordinary wealth of artists and art in this area. Do you cross over? I mean, you're not exclusively here. Do you commingle?
Yes. I know I do, and I know others in our group do. Right now, I sit on the board of the Sacandaga Valley Arts Network that is up in the Great Sacandaga Lake, where I live, and also the entire watershed that reaches up into Hamilton County, Speculator, and Piseco. I'm also a member of the Guild of Adirondack Artists, and so I have a lot of other affiliations. In
Artists
fact-
need other artists, don't
Oh,
they?
always, yes. Yes. One needs that camaraderie and to talk about, do art talk, essentially, you know, just, or reviewing their work, getting together, talking about things that are problematic in their work, you know, and there are a number of artists who are doing that,
How wonderful.
so,
Thank you again for being my guest.
oh, you're
Really
very welcome.
enjoyed our conversation.
A pleasure.
And thanks for joining me on this edition of Getting to Know You. I hope you enjoyed today's show and will join me next week. Until then, have a good one.